Sagittarius has one of the most misunderstood reputations in the zodiac. People often describe them as the free spirit, the wanderer, the one who never stays in one place for too long. They are adventurous, optimistic, curious about the world, always searching for the next experience, the next horizon, the next story waiting to unfold. But alongside this adventurous image comes another label that follows Sagittarius everywhere: the one who disappears. The one who vanishes when things start to get serious. The one who runs when commitment begins to feel real. And because of this pattern, many assume Sagittarius leaves simply because they do not care enough to stay. But the truth is far more complicated. Sagittarius does not disappear because staying is boring. Sagittarius disappears because staying can be terrifying. At their core, Sagittarius is a sign driven by freedom, exploration, and expansion. Their energy is constantly reaching outward, searching for meaning, wisdom, and experience. They want to understand life not through theory, but through living it fully. They believe the world is too vast to remain confined, too complex to stop questioning, too beautiful to stop discovering. But this same desire for freedom creates a quiet emotional tension inside them. Because while Sagittarius loves exploration, they also crave connection. They want deep conversations, meaningful relationships, and people who understand their restless spirit. The conflict begins when these two desires collide. For Sagittarius, staying in one place emotionally can feel like stepping into unfamiliar territory. Exploration is easy, adventure is exciting, but emotional permanence, that feels unpredictable. When a relationship begins to deepen, when vulnerability starts replacing casual conversation, Sagittarius may suddenly feel an internal alarm activate. It is not that they do not care. In fact, the opposite is often true. The more meaningful the connection becomes, the more pressure they feel, because staying means responsibility. Staying means expectations. Staying means someone else now has the power to affect their freedom. This is the moment many people interpret as distance. Sagittarius may start pulling back slightly. They might become harder to reach, slower to respond, more focused on external activities. Sometimes they travel more. Sometimes they dive into work, hobbies, or new experiences. From the outside, it looks like avoidance. Sagittarius is processing something far deeper than simple disinterest. It's there. They're trying to understand whether commitment will expand their life or restrict it. Because for Sagittarius, the greatest fear is not love. The greatest fear is losing themselves inside love. Sagittarius has an identity built around movement, growth, and independence. Their sense of self is closely tied to the ability to choose their own direction. When they imagine a future that feels limiting, something inside them resists. They fear becoming trapped in routines that slowly erase their curiosity. They fear waking up one day and realizing they stopped exploring who they could become. So when a relationship begins to define their entire life, they instinctively create distance to regain perspective. But here is the paradox that Sagittarius often struggles to admit. They do want connection. They want someone who can walk beside them through life's adventures. Want someone who understands their need for growth instead of trying to contain it. The challenge is that Sagittarius rarely sees examples of relationships that truly allow both freedom and closeness. Too often they witness partnerships built on control, expectations, and limitations. And so they assume that staying automatically means losing autonomy. When Sagittarius disappears emotionally, it is rarely because the connection meant nothing. More often, it is because the connection meant too much, too quickly. The intensity of attachment can make them feel like their independence is slipping away. They begin asking themselves questions they struggle to answer. Will I still be able to grow? Will I still have space to discover new parts of myself? Will I still feel like me? And when those questions remain unresolved, their instinct is to retreat temporarily. The truth is that Sagittarius does not run from people as much as they run from emotional confinement. They fear that staying will require them to shrink. They fear expectations that quietly accumulate until they feel trapped. And because they value honesty deeply, they sometimes disappear before making promises they are not sure they can keep. Ironically, the right relationship for Sagittarius is not one that tries to hold them tighter. It is one that allows them to breathe. When they feel trusted instead of controlled, something shifts inside them. The urge to escape begins to fade. The curiosity that usually pulls them outward becomes something they want to share rather than pursue alone. Sagittarius can be deeply loyal when they believe their freedom will be respected rather than restricted. Another hidden truth about Sagittarius is that they often struggle with emotional vulnerability. They are excellent at discussing ideas, philosophies, and dreams. But when conversations turn deeply personal, they sometimes feel exposed. Their natural humor and optimism become shields that keep heavier emotions at a distance. It is not that they lack emotional depth. In fact, Sagittarius can feel very deeply. But expressing that depth requires slowing down, and slowing down can feel uncomfortable for someone used to constant movement. This is why Sagittarius may disappear during emotionally intense moments. When conflict arises or vulnerability increases, they may instinctively step away to process things privately. They need time to understand what they feel without external pressure. Unfortunately, this silence can be interpreted as indifference by others who expect immediate reassurance. But Sagittarius' emotional process is different. They often need space to reconnect with themselves before they can reconnect with someone else. Distance is not always abandonment. Sometimes it is reflection. The challenge comes when that reflection lasts too long, turning temporary distance into permanent separation. Growth for Sagittarius begins when they realize that staying does not have to mean surrendering their freedom. The right connection does not cage them. It supports their evolution. A healthy relationship can become another form of adventure, a journey of discovery shared with someone who respects their individuality. When Sagittarius learns to communicate their fears openly instead of disappearing silently, everything changes. Saying "I need space to think" is far different from vanishing without explanation. Expressing uncertainty allows their partner to understand their process rather than assume the worst. And slowly, Sagittarius begins to see that honesty strengthens relationships far more than avoidance ever could. Sagittarius' spirit was never meant to be contained, but it was also never meant to travel completely alone. Their greatest relationships are those where exploration continues together, where curiosity is encouraged, where freedom exists inside commitment. So if you have ever experienced a Sagittarius disappearing, remember that their absence may not mean they did not care. Sometimes it means they cared enough to feel scared. Scared of losing themselves. Scared of losing their future possibilities. Scared of making promises before understanding what those promises mean. And if you are a Sagittarius who recognizes this pattern within yourself, understand that your need for freedom is not a flaw. It is part of your nature. But connection does not have to threaten that freedom. The right people will not ask you to stop growing. They will grow with you. Sagittarius does not disappear because they hate staying. Sagittarius disappears because staying also requires courage. The courage to trust that love can expand their world instead of limiting it. If this resonated with you, comment Sagittarius below. Share this video with someone who has ever wondered why Sagittarius sometimes disappears. Subscribe to the channel to continue exploring the hidden emotional truths behind every zodiac sign.